She asked me to go with her, but instead I'm here.
Spare me the details.
We both played a little too rough. But what if instead of competing with each other, we were on the same team?
That's not how investigations work.
Son, I know how investigations work. I don't need a lecture from the freshman class.
The food tastes better in the house than in the field.
My parents were on my doorstep the next morning. They drove 16 hours from Chicago. Stayed with me for a month. I was done.
Listen, man, I appreciate your work today. I think this thing with Joe got us off on a bad foot. She cares a lot about you.
Yeah, we're friends. That's all.
Hi, I'm Charles Michael Davis, guest curator for Saatchi Art. I've been collecting art for over 10 years, and I started with photography.
Ever wonder what it takes to go from accidentally shoplifting headphones in Ohio to ruling the French Quarter as a vampire king?
You find him, and then you call me. Don't worry. I know how to deal with Klaus.
Is that so? Please elaborate.
Charles Michael Davis's journey wasn't just about landing roles. It involved a muscle literally turning into bone, a public urination charge that still haunts him, and a career pivot so risky his family thought he'd lost his mind. But what happened behind the scenes of the originals? And why did one injury almost end everything before it began?
I think the witches are trying to use it against her. It's something that you're not gonna like.
Born December 1st, 1984, in Dayton, Ohio, Charles Michael Davis entered the world as the son of Charles Davis from Kentucky and Marina Davis from Manila, Philippines. This African-American and Filipino heritage would become part of his unique appeal, a face that could shift between worlds, cultures, and yes, supernatural creatures.
You know, I didn't have too many people to look up to. Definitely no one that was, half black and Filipino.
Right.
So I love the CW for that, and I love their program. I love that, they're conscious of it.
But before vampire fangs in New Orleans, there was a 10-year-old kid in Ohio with sticky fingers and bad judgment. That brush with the law didn't exactly set the stage for Hollywood stardom. Neither did his college years, where Charles found himself facing something far more embarrassing than a failed audition. During his time studying marketing, a degree he'd come to realize meant absolutely nothing to him, Charles attended a party that went sideways fast. Someone passed out over the only toilet. Nature called. Charles made a choice. That choice involved stepping outside. That choice also involved a police officer who happened to be passing by at the worst possible moment. A public urination charge. Not exactly the origin story Marvel writes movies about.
But here's what most people don't know about Charles Michael Davis. He never planned to act. Marketing was the safe choice, the responsible path. His parents probably breathed easier knowing their son had a practical degree lined up. Except Charles felt like he was dying inside, sitting in those classes, imagining a life of spreadsheets and quarterly reports. Then came the convention that changed everything. Charles had been doing print modeling in Ohio for about a year. Nike, Foot Locker, the kind of work that paid but didn't exactly set his soul on fire. His agent convinced him to attend a talent convention in Florida, but there was a catch. If Charles wanted to go, he had to compete in both the modeling category and the acting competition.
Print modeling in Ohio. And then my agent, after a year of being with him, he took me to a convention in Florida. And then I got to do, he told me if I take you to the convention, you got to do the modeling stuff and you got to do the acting.
The callbacks came flooding in, not for modeling, for acting. Agents from New York and Los Angeles wanted to meet this kid from Ohio who'd apparently been imitating what he saw on TV his whole life without realizing he was preparing for a career.
And then when it came time for callbacks at the end of the competition, the majority of mine were for acting. So I got to meet different agents from New York and LA.
That's when Charles made the leap. He left school, packed his life into whatever fit in his car, and drove to LA with no formal training, no connections, and the dream that probably looked delusional to everyone watching.
After about a couple months, I left school and then moved out to LA. And then once I got to LA, I dove into acting.
2 months later, he booked his first television role.
That's So Raven wasn't just his first gig. It was validation, proof that the instinct-driven approach, the imitate what feels right method, actually worked.
I didn't have any theater training, so I think I just imitated what I saw, in film and television.
Charles showed up on set with hair out to here, like a little Bruno Mars kind of thing, barely recognizable in the role, but he'd done it. He'd booked a job in Hollywood within weeks of arriving.
It's a little co-star role on That's So Raven.
Stop.
And I'm not even recognizable. I have this hair that's out to here, like a little Bruno Mars kind of hairdo.
But the road from guest spots to leading man, that took years of grinding. Grey's Anatomy came calling. Switch That Birth gave him the recurring role of Liam Lupo. Each credit built his resume. Each scene taught him more about the craft he'd stumbled into. Then in 2011, BET's The Game offered him the role of Quan Kirkland, a quarterback for the San Diego Sabres. Football player to vampire king. Makes perfect sense, right? February 2013 brought the phone call that would define Charles Michael Davis's career. The CW was developing a spin-off of The Vampire Diaries, centered on the original family, the first vampires, the most dangerous creatures in their universe.
Elijah is as good as dead, so is Cole. Before the night's over, Klaus will follow along with it.
These ancient beings were heading to New Orleans, a city rich with supernatural history. But in this version of New Orleans, the originals wouldn't be in charge. A vampire named Marcel Gerard ruled the French Quarter. He'd built an empire, controlled the factions, and turned the city into his kingdom. And they wanted Charles to bring him to life. The originals premiered in October 2013, and Marcel Gerard became the character that showcased everything Charles could do. The charisma, the complexity, the ability to play both villain and hero depending on the scene. Marcel wasn't just a vampire. He was Klaus Michelson's former protege, Rebecca's secret lover, and a leader willing to do whatever it took to protect his city.
And they're all trying to figure each other out. I think the sires are coming in, wondering who Marcel is and what his relationship is to the originals and how they could use that.
Playing Marcel meant long hours on set in Atlanta, where the originals filmed. It meant building chemistry with Joseph Morgan, who played the volatile Klaus, and navigating storylines that could shift from romance to warfare within a single episode.
He's awesome on set. I can't stand him off set. He really gets under my skin. I'm kidding.
That dynamic between Marcel and Klaus became the emotional core of the series. Two men who loved each other like family, but could never quite trust each other.
Really about who rules New Orleans. It's really about relationships and family. So it's more about how not we work together as a team, but how we work together as a family.
Every scene between them crackled with history, hurt, and the possibility of violence. But behind the scenes, Charles was dealing with something that threatened to end not just his role, but his entire physical ability to perform. Myositis ossificans. Most people have never heard of it. Charles wishes he hadn't learned about it the way he did. He tore his adductor muscle, a painful injury, but usually manageable. Except in Charles's case, something went horrifically wrong. The muscle began calcifying, turning to bone. His body was literally transforming healthy tissue into something rigid and immobile. Imagine being on a show where you're required to fight, run, perform stunts, and suddenly your muscle is calcifying. The pain alone would be unbearable, but the fear, the realization that your body might be ending your career before you'd barely started, that's the kind of nightmare actors don't talk about publicly because it sounds too surreal to be real. Charles fought through it. Physical therapy, treatment, sheer willpower. He had to, because the originals wasn't just a job. It was his shot at building something lasting in Hollywood. And while his body was betraying him, his creative spirit was exploding in other directions. Furniture building, painting, Jimi Hendrix specifically. Photography that went beyond casual snapshots into genuine artistic expression. Charles launched his own website, CharlesMichaelDavis.com, showcasing work that reveals a completely different side of the actor people knew from television. But here's what really gets people talking. Charles's personal life, specifically his relationship history, remains one of Hollywood's better-kept secrets. February 4th, 2014, Charles went public with his relationship with Katrina Amato, a choreographer whose work in the dance world matched his artistic sensibilities. They seemed perfect together, two creative souls navigating the entertainment industry's chaos together.
Well, when I was in New York, one of the great things about being in New York, a blessing and shooting the show there was I met her. Yeah, and she's actually, I'm out here in LA. And that was one thing that I noticed when I first met her, and so it made it very easy to really just like snatch her up and commit to her and be like, you're my girlfriend.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
you guys make a beautiful couple.
Oh, thank you.
What happened between then and now remains largely private. Charles keeps his romantic life off social media, rarely discusses relationships in interviews, and maintains a level of privacy that's almost unheard of for actors of his generation. Rumors of an engagement surfaced, then disappeared. Current relationship status? Unknown. And Charles seems determined to keep it that way. Meanwhile, the originals ran for 5 seasons, ending in 2018 with an emotional finale that left Marcel as one of the few major characters still standing. Klaus sacrificed himself. Elijah died. But Marcel? Marcel got to keep ruling New Orleans, forever the king who outlasted them all. The end of the originals could have meant the end of Marcel Gerard, but legacies don't die that easily. When the CW launched Legacies, a spin-off focused on Hope Michelson, Klaus's daughter, the door remained open for Marcel to return.
He did promise to always be there if ever she needs. So if Hope ever gets into a bind, then yeah, I think Marcel will be there.
That promise to always be there for Hope, Charles meant it, and fans knew that any threat dangerous enough would bring Marcel Gerard back to protect the girl he'd watched grow up. But Charles wasn't waiting around for vampire callbacks. He was already building his next chapter. In 2019, Charles joined the cast of Younger, TV Land's hit series about the publishing industry. He played Zane Anders.
You just got a lot more interesting. Besides, we were gonna cut him from the roster anyway.
A cocky, competitive literary agent whose arrival shook up the entire dynamic of the show. Zane gave Charles something Marcel never could: suits. Lots of suits. Impeccable, expensive New York publishing world suits.
That my character gets to wear suits, and they go, well, clearly you haven't been watching the show because Daniel Gillies' character always wears suits.
Yep.
So then when I got over to Younger and I was in nothing but suits, and being in New York, they put me in like a Dolce & Gabbana suit.
The role showcased Charles's range in ways vampire drama never allowed: comedy, romance, workplace dynamics, all without a single fang or supernatural complication. Younger ran until 2021, giving Charles 5 seasons to prove he could carry a contemporary series just as effectively as he'd ruled the supernatural world. Between the originals and Younger, Charles had built something rare: 2 distinct fandoms, 2 completely different character types, and proof that he wasn't just the vampire guy. But what about the arts, the photography, the furniture building? Those weren't hobbies. They were becoming central to who Charles Michael Davis actually is beyond the roles. In 2023, Charles took another leap. He became an art curator, partnering with Saatchi Art and the Other Art Fair to curate collections that reflected his aesthetic sensibility. The curation work revealed something fascinating about Charles's creative process. He approaches everything: acting, arts, photography, furniture, with the same deliberate thoughtfulness. He's not chasing trends, he's building a personal aesthetic that happens to resonate with others. His home became an extension of this philosophy: geometric art, colorful pieces, photography that tells stories. Every item chosen because it means something, not because it matches a Pinterest board. And the furniture building? That started as a way to fill his space with pieces he couldn't find anywhere else. Now, it's another form of creative expression, another way Charles controls the narrative of his own life. But Charles wasn't done reinventing himself. In 2024, he added another skill to his growing list: Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Jiu-Jitsu. all right, day one, day two, you don't have that much experience, but after a year, you have some experience and you kind of know the path, you know the route a little bit more.
The discipline, the constant failure, the humility required to let someone smaller than you completely dominate you on the mat. All of it appeal to Charles's competitive nature and his belief that growth requires discomfort. He trains multiple times a week, attends classes in the Valley, and approaches it with the same intensity he brings to everything else. This isn't casual exercise. This is Charles building another skill, another layer to who he is. And speaking of building, Charles recently made another major commitment, adopting a puppy named Ernie.
Oh, kisses.
Oh, you have moss all over your beard.
Ernie, I think he's hungry. During the break, I'll have to give him his food.
Ernie's become a regular presence in Charles's life and content, representing perhaps the most grounded, normal thing about a man who spent the last decade playing supernatural creatures and navigating Hollywood's weirdness. So where does Charles Michael Davis stand now in 2025? He's got an estimated net worth of approximately $3 million, built through years of consistent work across television, film, modeling, and now art curation. Not billionaire money, but the kind of wealth that comes from smart choices and sustained success. He's actively teaching acting, passing along the instinct-driven approach that worked for him to new performers trying to find their own path. He's curating art shows. His most recent exhibition took place at Barker Hangar in Santa Monica, where attendees could even have their portraits taken by Charles himself while wearing animal masks. And he's still acting, because despite the art, the photography, the jujitsu, and everything else, Charles Michael Davis remains at his core a performer who stumbled into the perfect career entirely by accident.
That adds value, because then you're also giving somebody something new, something original, something personal, because it's like your prompt, and that's where I'm at now.
The strikes of 2023 gave Charles time to focus on the artist side of his identity rather than just the actor. He used that time to develop his craft, explore new creative avenues, and remind himself why he fell in love with storytelling in the first place. Current projects remain somewhat under wraps, but Charles continues to work in television and film while expanding his presence in the art world. He's become one of those rare entertainment figures who genuinely operates across multiple creative fields without any single one feeling like a side hustle. His multicultural background, African American and Filipino, continues to inform his perspective on representation and the kinds of stories he wants to tell. He's spoken about the importance of being visible, of showing young people who look like him that there's space for them in industries that haven't always welcomed diversity. And through it all, Charles maintains that same privacy about his personal life that's defined his career. No messy public breakups, no scandals designed for tabloid covers, just a man doing the work, building the life, and keeping the parts that matter most to himself. The shoplifting charge from when he was 10, the public urination incident in college, those are the closest things to scandals in Charles Michael Davis's story, and they happened before Hollywood even knew his name. Which brings us back to that original question. What does it take to go from Ohio to Vampire King, to art curator, to jujitsu practitioner, to whatever comes next? For Charles, it's always been about following instinct over instruction, trusting his taste over trends, and building a life that reflects who he actually is, rather than who the industry thinks he should be. He could have stayed in marketing, could have kept modeling, could have played it safe. Instead, he drove to Los Angeles with nothing but confidence and a willingness to fail, booked a role within 2 months, spent 5 seasons ruling the French Quarter, transitioned seamlessly into contemporary television, and then decided that acting wasn't enough. He needed to create in every possible medium. That's not luck. That's someone who understands that careers aren't linear, that creativity doesn't fit in boxes, and that the worst thing you can do is limit yourself to what others expect. Charles Michael Davis built an empire out of instinct, one role at a time, one artistic choice at a time, one deliberate decision at a time, and he's nowhere near finished telling us what else he can do.